Let me tell you something. Self-respect is the foundation of every healthy relationship you'll ever have in a palace of peace on a cracked foundation of insecurity. The moment you learn to respect yourself is the moment you stop allowing people to play with your peace. See, a lot of folks out here want love so bad, they forget to love themselves first. They'll chase after attention, settle for inconsistency, and tolerate behavior that makes them question their worth. All because they're scared of being alone. But hear me clearly, being alone ain't the punishment. Being with the wrong person, that's the real prison. Self-respect is not arrogance, it's self-awareness. It's knowing that you bring something, it's even if you built the table yourself. When you have standards, you don't just accept whatever someone offers because you're desperate for company. You choose peace over drama, honesty over confusion, and growth over comfort. You stop negotiating with people who only want discounts on your value. When you respect yourself, you start teaching people how to treat you. Not by what you say, but by what you allow, what you stop, and what you reinforce. Now, I've seen people make this mistake over and over, confusing standards with walls. Standards don't block people out. They filter who deserves to come in. Think about it like this. When you set the thermostat in your house, you're not being mean to the weather outside. You're just deciding what kind of climate you want to live in. That's what standards do. They create an environment that matches your peace, not your pain. When you have self-respect, you stop chasing love and start attracting it. You stop being impressed by potential and start valuing consistency. You start realizing that effort, honesty, and emotional maturity aren't luxuries. They're the basics. And if someone can't give you the basics, they don't deserve your best. Here's the hard truth most people don't want to admit. Your standards are not supposed to be convenient for everyone. They will make some people uncomfortable. They will make others walk away, but let them walk. Because every time you lower your standards to keep someone, you lose a piece of yourself trying to make them comfortable. You start dimming your light so they won't feel insecure in your glow. And eventually you wake up one day wondering why you feel drained, disrespected, and disconnected. It's because you started shrinking yourself to fit inside someone else's limitations. I remember once on my radio show, I told a caller this exact thing. She said, "Steve, I keep attracting men who play games. Why do I keep ending up hurt?" And I told her, "Baby, you don't attract what you deserve. You attract what you tolerate." See, life will keep sending you the same lesson in a different body until you finally learn it. If your standard is low effort, that's exactly what will show up. But if your standard is respect, consistency, and communication, that's what will start gravitating toward you. The world treats you how you treat yourself. If you constantly accept less than what you deserve, you're giving the world permission to disrespect you. But when you walk with self-respect, you carry yourself differently. You speak differently. You stop explaining your worth and start demonstrating it. People notice that energy. They may not always say it, but they feel it. They can tell you've done the work on yourself. They can see that you're not just looking for love, you're ready for partnership. Here's something you need to understand: standards are not built overnight. They're built through pain, lessons, and growth. You don't develop self-respect because everything went right. You develop it because you survived when everything went wrong. You learn that love without respect ain't love at all. You learn that apologies without change mean nothing. You learn that promises without consistency are just noise. That pain taught you how to protect your peace. That heartbreak taught you the value of boundaries. And that disappointment taught you that not everyone who wants access to you deserves it. You have to stop giving discounts to people who only want the benefits of you without the commitment to you. Because every time you do that, you tell yourself your value depends on someone else's approval. But your worth isn't up for debate. It's already been decided. You are valuable because you exist. You don't have to prove that to anyone. Now, when you start walking in self-respect, people will call you too much. They'll say you're too demanding, too independent, too hard to please. But let me tell you, too much only sounds that way to people who are not enough. To the right person, your standards will not be a burden, they'll be a blessing. Because the right person won't be intimidated by your boundaries. They'll be inspired by them. They'll respect that you know what you want because they're the same way. That's the beauty of self-respect. It doesn't just change who you attract, it changes what you accept. It changes how you talk to yourself. It changes how you recover from heartbreak. When you have standards, rejection doesn't feel like loss, it feels like protection. Because you know what's yours will never require you to compromise your peace. I'm telling you from experience. Life gets better when you stop chasing people and start standing in your value. When you stop begging for effort and start expecting it. When you stop waiting for someone to see your worth and start walking like you already know it. That's when everything changes. You begin to glow differently. You start moving with confidence. You start operating from a place of abundance instead of fear. See, self-respect doesn't just help you attract the right relationship. It helps you build a better life. Because once you respect yourself enough to say no to what doesn't serve you, you make room for what actually will. That's when peace enters. That's when love starts to feel safe. That's when you realize that your standards were never too high. You were just asking the wrong people to reach them. So if you're listening right now and you've been questioning whether your standards are the reason you're single, let me remind you, standards don't keep you single. Settling does. Standards don't scare away love, they protect it. Self-respect is not a defense mechanism, it's your foundation. And when you build from that foundation, the love that comes into your life will be the kind that stays, grows, and honors who you truly are. Let me tell you something most people don't realize. Having standards doesn't make you hard to love, it makes you easy to understand. When you know what you want, what you need, and what you stand for, you're not being picky, you're being precise. And there's a big difference between the two. Picky people complain about everything. Precise people just know what fits their piece. Standards aren't about perfection, they're about clarity. They help you define your worth before somebody tries to define it for you. See, when you finally start setting standards, people will start saying, oh, you've changed. Yeah, you're right, you did change. You changed from the person who tolerated confusion, accepted inconsistency, and ignored red flags to someone who values peace, honesty, and alignment. That's not being difficult, that's being clear. You see, when you've been broken before, you stop playing around with people who don't take your heart seriously. Now, here's the thing about clarity. It intimidates people who benefit from your confusion. When you didn't have standards, folks could come and go as they pleased. They could text you when they were bored, disappear when they wanted space, and still expect you to be waiting when they came back. But once you start making it clear what you will and won't tolerate, you mess up that pattern. You stop being convenient. You stop being an option. You stop being one who keeps the peace at the expense of your own. And the moment you do that, the wrong people start falling off, not because you pushed them away, but because your peace stopped entertaining their chaos. You've got to stop apologizing for having standards. Stop shrinking yourself so you don't intimidate someone who refuses to grow. Your standards aren't unreasonable. They're a reflection of your growth. You don't demand respect because you're prideful. You demand it because you've lived through being disrespected. You don't ask for honesty because you're paranoid. You ask for it because you've been lied to. You don't want consistency because you're controlling. You want it because you've seen what inconsistency can do to your soul. Those standards came from experience, from lessons learned the hard way. Let me tell you something from my own life. I didn't get where I am by lowering my standards. Every time I tried to please people who didn't see my value, I lost a piece of myself. It wasn't until I started saying, this is who I am, this is what I need, and this is how I move, that the right people started showing up. That's what happens when you get clear. You stop chasing folks who can't match your energy. You start attracting folks who already have it. See, people think standards are about being stubborn. No, they're about being steady. It's not about control, it's about direction. When you set standards, you're saying, this is the kind of love I'm ready for. You're saying, I'm not going to waste my time entertaining temporary people. You're saying, if you're not building, we're not bonding. That's clarity, not difficulty. Here's what I've learned. People who truly love you won't see your standards as rules. They'll see them as roadmaps. They'll appreciate that you have structure, that you have expectations, that you know yourself. Because mature love requires guidance. It's not chaos, it's cooperation. When you both know what's expected, you both know how to show up. But immature people, they always try to twist your clarity into a problem. They'll say you're too hard to please, too independent, too guarded. That's because your boundaries expose their lack of discipline. They're used to people who let them get away with laziness, dishonesty, and inconsistency. So when you show up with self-respect and standards, they get uncomfortable. Don't take that personally. That's just your growth highlighting their immaturity. When you raise your standards, you stop chasing relationships and start creating peace. You stop asking, why don't they like me? And start asking, do I even like the way they treat me? You stop being emotionally available to people who are spiritually empty. You stop confusing chemistry with compatibility. Because clarity makes it easy to see who's real and who's pretending. And you know what's funny? When you have no standards, everybody wants access to you. But when you finally decide to raise them, you become too much. Why? Because now they have to put in effort, they have to be consistent, they have to show up. And not everybody's ready for that. But don't you dare lower your expectations to make somebody else feel comfortable. Because every time you do, you end up paying for it later in tears, confusion, and wasted time. Your standards are not barriers, they're boundaries that protect your peace. If you don't define them, someone else will define them for you, and it won't be in your favor. The truth is, people can only meet you at the level they've met themselves. If they haven't learned self-respect, they won't understand why you haven't. If they haven't done the work to heal, they'll call your healing or attitude. That's why clarity is power. It allows you to separate those who truly align with you from those who only pretend to. Let me break it down like this. When you walk into a restaurant and look at the menu, you're not shocked by the prices. You either pay what it costs or you leave. The same goes for love. You set your value by your standards. If someone can't afford to pay with effort, honesty, loyalty, and consistency, they're not your customer. You don't have to argue about it. You don't have to lower your price. You don't have to prove your worth. You just stand firm. Because when you stand firm, the right person won't negotiate your worth. They'll meet it. Clarity attracts maturity. Confusion attracts chaos. And you can't build peace in a relationship full of confusion. You deserve someone who knows how to communicate, who values your time, who shows up without being reminded. And the only way to attract that is to be clear about it. Let's be real, standards will cost you some people. You might lose a few connections. You might spend a few nights alone. But don't mistake isolation for punishment. It's preparation. God sometimes clears the room before he brings in the right person. And if you keep lowering your standards to make room for the wrong ones, you'll miss the blessing meant for you. So here's my message to you. Don't ever apologize for knowing what you deserve. Don't ever feel bad for having expectations. People who truly want to be in your life will adjust. Those who don't will exit. And that's okay. Your clarity will offend the confused, but it will attract the committed. Because at the end of the day, standards don't make love harder. They make it healthier. You are not difficult. You're divine. You're not too much. You're precise. And the person who's meant for you won't be scared by your standards. They'll be grateful for them. Because the truth is, love built on clarity lasts longer than love built on confusion. And once you understand that, you'll stop chasing people who tolerate you and start waiting for the one who values you. Let me tell you something from the bottom of my heart. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is lowering their standards just to keep somebody who was never meant to stay. You can't build a healthy connection by constantly bending your boundaries. Every time you lower your standards, you send the message that your peace is negotiable. And the truth is, once somebody knows they can get away with disrespect, inconsistency, or laziness, they'll keep testing you to see how low you'll go to keep them. Now, I get it. Love makes us do some wild things. You start off strong saying, I'll never accept this, or I'll never let anyone treat me like that. But then your heart gets involved and suddenly never starts turning into maybe. You start giving passes to behavior that used to be unacceptable. You start excusing what you should be addressing. You tell yourself, well, maybe they'll change. Or they didn't mean it like that. Before you know it, you're accepting crumbs and calling it a meal. Listen, I don't care how much potential someone has. Potential without effort is nothing but empty promises. You can't keep watering someone who refuses to grow. And you definitely can't keep lowering your standards hoping they'll rise up to meet you. Because people don't rise to expectations they didn't agree to. They fall to the level of what you allow. Every time you lower your standards to make someone comfortable, you teach them that your boundaries are flexible. And love should never require you to lose your backbone. You know what lowering your standards really does? It drains you. It makes you start questioning your own worth. You start feeling like maybe you're asking for too much. But let me ask you this. Is honesty asking for too much? Is consistency too much? Is respect too much? No, those are basics. And if somebody makes you feel guilty for expecting the basics, that's a sign they were never equipped to love you in the first place. I remember once on my talk show, a young woman said, Steve, I keep giving chances to a man who promises he'll change, but he never does. I don't want to lose him. I told her straight up, you already lost him. The moment you started losing yourself trying to keep him, because real love doesn't require you to sacrifice your peace for someone else's comfort. Real love meets you where you are and grows with you. See, when you lower your standards, you're not protecting love, you're protecting the illusion of it. You're trying to hold on to something that's already fading, thinking your effort will make it last. But love isn't meant to be one-sided. You can't be the only one showing up, the only one forgiving, the only one fighting. That's not love, that's emotional exhaustion dressed up as loyalty. Let me give you some real wisdom. The right person will never make you choose between loving them and respecting yourself. They'll never make you feel like your boundaries are a burden. They'll honor them because they understand that boundaries are how you love yourself. When you lower your standards for someone, you're teaching them that their comfort matters more than your self-respect. And the truth is, anyone who truly loves you will never be okay with that. You've got to stop thinking that walking away means you lost. Sometimes walking away is the greatest display of self-love there is. Because when you walk away from what's not serving you, you're walking toward what will. You're telling the universe, I'm done settling for less than I deserve. And I promise you, the moment you do that, things start shifting. You start attracting people who see your value, not your vulnerability. You start feeling peace again because you finally chose yourself. Now, don't get me wrong. Having standards doesn't mean you're perfect or that you expect perfection. It just means you've learned your worth. You've learned that peace is better than pretending. You've learned that being single and happy beats being attached and miserable. You've learned that love without respect is manipulation, not affection. And once you learn that, you can't unlearn it. People sometimes ask me, Steve, how do I know if I'm lowering my standards? Here's how. If you're constantly explaining why you stay, you've already lowered them. If you have to keep reminding someone how to treat you, you've already compromised. If your peace depends on their moods or their validation, you've given away too much power. Love is supposed to lift you, not drain you. If it's draining you, you're investing in the wrong thing. Let's be real. Sometimes we lower our standards because we think we can change someone. But you can't fix a person who doesn't see a problem with their behavior. You can't make someone ready for the kind of love you're built to give. Change doesn't come from pressure. It comes from desire. And if someone doesn't want to grow, no amount of love will make them. You have to be willing to lose people to find peace. Because peace is never found in compromise that costs your dignity. When you finally stop begging people to see your worth, you create space for the ones who already do. You'll realize that keeping someone who drains you isn't a victory. It's a delay. It's delaying the healing, delaying the growth, delaying the love that's meant for you. I'll tell you something else. The person who's truly meant for you will never need you to shrink. They'll never need you to hide your strength or silence your standards. They'll see your strength and love you for it. They'll see your standards and rise to meet them. Because real love doesn't demand you to lower your value. It calls you higher. So stop begging for effort. Stop justifying mistreatment. Stop calling inconsistency patience. You're not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong person. And the moment you decide you'd rather be alone than disrespected, everything changes. That's when self-worth kicks in. That's when your peace returns. That's when you finally start to understand that walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You've got to stop trying to save relationships that can only survive if you keep lowering your standards. Because one day, you'll wake up and realize you gave your best to someone who didn't even deserve your minimum. That's not love. That's self-betrayal, and you deserve better than that. Here's the truth: the love that's meant for you will never make you question your worth. It will never make you feel like you have to audition for affection. It will never make you compromise your peace just to keep it. So stop lowering your standards for people who wouldn't even raise theirs for you. Because when you finally understand that your peace, your worth, and your self-respect are non-negotiable, you'll stop chasing love that costs you everything. You'll stop losing sleep over people who were never meant to stay. And when you make that shift, that's when the real love, the mature love, the God-sent love will finally find you. Now let me break this down for you real clear. Emotions are powerful, but they can be dangerous when they go unchecked. See, love has a funny way of making us overlook things we should never tolerate. When those feelings get involved, when you're caught up in that passion, that attention, that "I finally found somebody" energy, your logic takes a backseat. And that's exactly why standards matter, because standards are your protection when emotions try to blind you. Every one of us has been there before. You meet someone, the chemistry is right, the connection feels strong, and suddenly you stop paying attention to what your spirit is trying to tell you. You see the red flags, but you color them pink. You notice the inconsistencies, but you convince yourself they'll change. You feel that something's off, but you ignore it because you don't want to lose the feeling of being wanted. That's how emotions work. They'll make you justify pain in the name of love. But let me tell you something: love that requires you to ignore your peace is not love, it's a warning. That's where your standards come in. Standards are like emotional seatbelts. They keep you safe when the ride gets bumpy. They don't stop you from feeling, they just keep your feelings from driving you into a ditch. When you know what you stand for, you can still love deeply, but wisely. You can give your heart, but not your sanity. Because without standards, love becomes chaos. And I don't care how good it feels at first. Chaos never sustains peace. I've seen so many people confuse intensity for intimacy. Just because someone gives you butterflies doesn't mean they deserve access to your life. Feelings can be loud. They'll scream, "This is it. This is the one." But standards whisper the truth. Is this healthy? Is this consistent? Is this aligned with my peace? Emotions can lie to you, but your standards never will. Let me tell you something from experience. I've learned that when your heart gets involved, your judgment gets cloudy. You start excusing behavior you'd never tolerate from anyone else. You start defending someone who keeps disappointing you. You keep trying to understand someone who keeps hurting. That's emotion talking. That's that hope, that dream, that maybe they'll change mentality. Hope is not a strategy. You can't build a relationship on potential, you build it on standards. See, standards are not walls, they're reminders. They remind you that love is supposed to feel safe, not stressful. They remind you that communication should bring clarity, not confusion. They remind you that affection without respect isn't love, it's manipulation. Because when you love someone without boundaries, you give them permission to love you carelessly. Here's what happens when you have standards: your emotions might still get you caught up sometimes, but your standards will always pull you back to reality. You might miss them, but your standards will say, "Remember how they made you feel." You might want to call them, but your standards will whisper, "You deserve consistency, not chaos." You might start reminiscing about the good moments, but your standards will remind you that love shouldn't come with conditions. And don't get it twisted. People who don't have standards will call you cold or guarded when you don't entertain nonsense. That's because your discipline exposes their recklessness. When you refuse to play games, you make players uncomfortable. When you demand clarity, you make manipulators nervous. And that's a good thing. That's your standards doing what they're supposed to do. protecting your heart from people who were never meant to hold it. Let me tell you, emotions fade, but consequences don't. That's why you can't let your heart make promises your standards can't keep. The truth is, love should never cost you your self-respect. If it does, it's not love, it's dependency. You can't keep confusing attachment with commitment. One is built on fear, the other on respect. And the only way to know the difference is to have standards that keep you grounded when your emotions try to fly you into fantasy. You've got to ask yourself, what am I building here? A relationship or a rescue mission? Because if you're constantly saving someone from themselves, you're not in love, you're in emotional labor. Your standards are supposed to stop that before it starts. They remind you that love isn't supposed to drain you. Love doesn't demand that you lose yourself to keep someone else. I remember telling a brother once, man, you keep saying you love this woman, but every time she walks away, you beg her to come back, even though she keeps breaking you down. He said, Steve, I can't help it. I love her. And I told him, no, son, you're addicted to her attention, not her love. That's what happens when your emotions get too loud. They drown out your logic. But if he had standards in place, he would have recognized that love without peace is not love worth keeping. Here's the thing, emotions make you act out of impulse. Standards make you act out of intention. Emotions make you chase, standards make you choose. Emotions make you settle because you don't want to be lonely. Standards make you wait because you know you're worth it. Emotions want what feels good right now. Standards want what will still feel good later. You see the difference? Love should add to your life, not take from it. The person you choose should bring stability, not chaos. And when your emotions start leading you down the wrong road, your standards are the GPS that says, turn around, this ain't it. They'll protect you when your heart wants to give another chance to someone who's already shown you who they are. Let me tell you something real. The right person for you will never make you question your standards. They'll respect them. They'll see that your standards come from wisdom, not ego. They'll understand that you've been through enough to know what you deserve. They won't take your boundaries as a challenge. They'll take them as an invitation to love you right. That's why I say, never feel bad for having standards. They're not keeping you from love. They're keeping you ready for the right love. Because when you protect your peace, you prepare your heart for someone who's capable of keeping it safe. So yeah, the emotions will try to blind you. They'll make you fall for potential excuse pain and romanticize chaos. But standards, they'll open your eyes. They'll keep you grounded in truth when your feelings try to sell you fantasy. They'll make sure that when you give your heart again, it's to someone who deserves it, not just someone who wants it. Love with your heart, but guard it with your standards, because the right love won't require you to lose your mind to keep it. And when you learn that lesson, you stop mistaking intensity for intimacy and start recognizing that real love feels like peace. Let me tell you something real. The love you attract will always match the standards you set. You can't expect loyalty if you entertain inconsistency. You can't attract respect if you keep settling for attention. And you can't call it love if it keeps costing you your peace. See, what most people don't understand is that standards aren't just about what you demand from others. They're about what you attract into your life. They're like a spiritual filter, separating what's meant for you from what's meant to distract you. If you walk into a restaurant and order steak, but keep accepting chicken every time they bring it, guess what? They'll stop offering you steak. Life works the same way. You keep accepting less, and life will stop sending more. The kind of love you receive is often a reflection of what you're willing to tolerate. And too many people confuse patience with permission. You keep saying, I'm just waiting for them to change. But what you're really doing is giving them permission to stay the same. Now, let's be real. It's easy to lower your standards when you're lonely. It's easy to convince yourself that a little affection is better than none. But let me tell you something. Temporary attention can never fill a permanent void. You can't build something lasting on something shallow. When you lower your standards just to feel loved, you don't end up with love. You end up with lessons. And the lesson will keep repeating itself until you finally understand your worth. Your standards teach people how to treat you. The moment you start enforcing them, you send a clear message. I'm not desperate. I'm deliberate. I don't chase, I choose. I'm not looking for company. I'm waiting for connection. Because love isn't about finding someone who checks every box. It's about finding someone who respects the boxes you've created. The person who truly values you will never ask you to compromise your peace to prove your love. When you start raising your standards, you'll notice something. Your circle gets smaller. That's because people who are benefiting from your lack of boundaries can't handle the version of you that finally has them. They'll say you've changed. And you know what? You have. You've evolved. You've finally realized that being alone is better than being drained. You've stopped confusing availability with compatibility. You've stopped trying to convince someone to choose you when all you had to do was choose yourself. I remember a sister once came to me after one of my shows. She said, Steve, why do I keep attracting men who don't want to commit? I looked her dead in the eye and said, because you keep accepting them. You see, attraction isn't just physical, it's energetic. If your energy says, I'll accept half love, you'll attract people who only give half. If your energy says, I'll tolerate inconsistency, you'll attract people who live in confusion. But when your energy says, I know my worth, you'll attract people who recognize it. That's the beauty of standards. They act like a mirror. Whatever's in you is what comes to you. You can't expect a healthy relationship if you're still entertaining unhealthy habits. You can't want a faithful partner while still accepting situationships. You can't pray for commitment while entertaining confusion. Life doesn't give you what you ask for. It gives you what you believe you deserve. And that's why raising your standards starts from within. When you truly understand your value, you stop negotiating it. You realize that the right person will never be scared of your standards. They'll be inspired by them. They'll see that your expectations come from experience, not ego. They'll know that your boundaries aren't barriers. They're guidelines for how to love you right. Because when you've been through enough pain, you stop being impressed by potential. You start looking for consistency, peace, and purpose. Let me drop this on you. The love you attract reflects the love you have for yourself. If you're constantly attracting people who mistreat you, it's not a coincidence. It's a signal. It's the universe's way of saying, you've still got some healing to do. Because people can only meet you as deeply as you've met yourself. If you haven't learned to value your own time, you'll attract people who waste it. If you haven't learned to respect your own boundaries, you'll attract people who cross them. But when you start loving yourself right, the wrong people will lose access naturally. I know it's not easy. It's hard to walk away from someone you love. It's hard to say no when your heart says yes. But you have to remember, every time you settle, you're teaching your heart to accept less than it deserves. You're telling yourself that comfort is more important than peace. And one day you'll wake up and realize that staying in the wrong situation cost you more than leaving ever would have. Standards aren't about being picky, they're about being purposeful. You're not rejecting people, you're protecting your peace. You're not asking for too much, you're just asking the wrong person. Because the right one will see your standards not as demands, but as direction. They'll step up, not step away. They'll understand that your boundaries are not challenges. They're invitations to love you on a higher level. And let me tell you something powerful. When you start living by your standards, you start attracting relationships that don't drain you, but develop you. You stop meeting people who test you and start meeting people who teach you. You stop finding lessons and start finding partners. That's when you know you've grown. When peace feels better than potential. So don't be afraid to raise your standards. The higher your standards, the smaller your circle, but the stronger your connections. The wrong people will fall away, but the right one will rise to meet you. You don't have to chase what's meant for you. You just have to become the version of yourself that's ready for it. And when that love finally shows up, the one that matches your energy, honors your standards, and values your worth, you'll look back and realize why every almost had to end. You'll thank yourself for not settling. You'll understand that your standards weren't pushing love away. They were preparing you for the kind that would stay. So hear me when I say this. The love you attract is a reflection of the love you demand. Keep your standards high because the right person will never ask you to lower them. And when that day comes, when you finally meet someone who respects your boundaries, matches your effort, and brings you peace, you'll realize that every lonely season, every heartbreak, and every now was worth it. Because it all led you to the love that was waiting for the version of you who finally refused to settle. That's the real power of standards. They don't just protect your heart, they shape your future.